What's up, guys? We're here. It's been a while, but we've been reading in the meantime and doing some other things.
Yeah.
That will appear on the channel shortly. Unrelated now, I was gonna announce when season 4 of Danmachi, but we'll get to that later.
We'll get to the clickbait later, I guess.
Yeah, so...
no, it's not clickbait, but we do have something interesting though. This is exciting, I think, for both of us. We actually got contacted by a publishing company named Moonquill, and I believe the CEO, Jimmy, he was the one that actually was messaging us and said that he would like to send us some books, so that's why we're here for this video. So thank you to him, first off. I mean, obviously that doesn't inflict our review process at all. I mean, we're still gonna give you our honest opinions of it. So, with that being said, Michael, can you tell us a little bit about Lord of Goblins?
I always want to use the word isekai, but I never know what it really means. So, so this time, this guy, he's from the future. He is in a futuristic world, and he wishes to save the world that he's in. Almost gets to the point where he can do so, gets killed, and reincarnated as a goblin-ish character. Not quite a god. It's like they're lower than goblins. I don't like their name. I don't like to say their names.
It's so funny.
It is funny.
Being classified as a bogey. You just know with like your race being named bogey, you're going to be like in the crosshairs of every adventurer that comes near this cave. But yeah, so that is kind of like the setup. This main protagonist that is from this other world is named Lev for short. He has a longer name that we will not go in and wasting 30 seconds of. But yeah, and he takes over the body of this goblinoid creature named Germ, who also has a sister. And it's kind of interesting in the way that the character of Germ is not completely taken over or taken out of the story. He's kind of still there in the recesses of Lev's mind, which gives it a different take than maybe some other in its category. But yeah, you just have like Lev formulating kind of the same goals and aspirations he had in his previous life, but trying to incorporate them in his new one. I think obviously trying to weed out the fact of a potential assassination again in his future. But yeah, I don't know how much we'll talk about like the actual story, because I don't like to give too much away to, first volumes, but we just kind of wanted to go over kind of our thoughts on it. There's a lot of back and forth for me. Michael, do you want to start with yours?
Sure, yeah, I can talk about my couple ideas about it. Okay. So first, let's get to, I think there's a lot of positive and there's not a lot of negative, but there's some things. When it's a first volume, obviously, for a lot of times, unless you're like a super experienced author, you're going to be working out some things and kind of developing new ideas. And I think it does do a good job of developing certain things about the world or the main character, what his aspirations are, and leaving you in a place where you want to see more. Throughout the book, there's several chapters that focus on not so much backstory, but we kind of get inserted into certain moments of his previous life that kind of go back to the events that are happening in the current world. We get some lore of the world. I think probably the most exciting or my favorite parts of the book was him actually going and plotting to become a leader. So he has one famous scene where he makes a speech, and then there's also some violent action before that. And I think those moments really, you get to see a little bit more of his character. Now, you don't really get a feel for if he's a pure good guy or a bad guy yet. And I think hopefully the author will develop that more. But I liked that. At times, there was some times where it was a little slow when it came to some of the backstory chapters. I think Josh has a little bit different opinion than I do on that. But overall, I think it was a interesting first volume, and I want to see more of the world and see what they do with this character for sure.
So one of the things, because you mentioned it, those chapters that do have peeks into Lev's old world, I think probably one of the reasons why I maybe enjoyed them a little bit more than Michael is just that I'm more of a sci-fi fan than fantasy. I mean, like a lot of fantasy stuff, but sci-fi is a little bit near and dear to me. So seeing just that, because Lev's from a more futuristic version or like alternate reality of like our own, I think that kind of leaves me a little bit more intrigued for those chapters because it is kind of a switch up of the genre completely. I don't know if it necessarily has any solid benefits. I think we've talked about that, through discussion, that there is definitely some like underlining things revealed to you about Lev, either like on a character level or just kind of like his knowledge of what he's had from his old world and why some of the things he's able to do in the current situation makes sense. But outside of that, I don't know if a lot of people like that, because for me, since I like sci-fi, it was one of the ones that also got me a little bit more intrigued and actually led me, I guess, excited for the other chapters that were like it. But somebody that maybe is picking this up thinking that it is like solely fantasy, those are probably going to be more of a drag. But thankfully, they're not very long. The overall book isn't that long either. So it's a pretty light read, I would say. There was one thing I should note is that, I don't know if you caught any other ones, but I know there was at least like 2 translation, or not translation, but I think they were just typo errors because this is an English written.
It's a new edition of the book for sure.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to check that out, if Moonquill's watching this or whatever, I saw it on page 24 and 155. So there you go. There's your little tidbit there.
For your second edition printing.
Yeah, but as far as the world, I actually did, and again, like I don't want to like misrepresent kind of what the world building is for this world, but I did kind of like how in this first volume there is an aspect of kind of this almost big shakeups in a smaller scale version of the world. So like, for instance, like the world that he's transported to, from what he's known and what he sees so far, all these like bogies are contained into one cavern or one cave system, and it's kind of their whole world. They do have outside dealings with the other part of the world, but it's not so like on their direct correlation or influence. It's more so through like, their taskmasters and the people that are above them. So everything that Lev is disrupting or trying to, I guess, acquire power from is on this very small section of society that is considered like the lowest of the low. And I just kind of liked that, knowing that, there's some outside force that just could come in and could be like perceived not as like anything big in like the world's probably like normal standing, but then just, create absolute havoc for them and the situation that they're going through.
It's the classic scenario, and I just thought about it, of like, they have a bad, in like one city they have a bad wheat crop, and like no one cares, but for them it's like a crisis. They have to like survive and kill each other to try to get enough wheat or food.
Oddly enough, it also gave me like reminiscent vibes of a show that we covered not too long ago, Solar Opposites, where you have the wall like side plot of the show, and how like it's literally just like some aquarium in like one of the characters' bedrooms, but it's literally, when we zoom in and look, it's mass hysteria and has so much impact in the ecosystem that they're in. So that was one thing that I think I liked a lot of the impact of this book. Again, because of the direction they're going, I don't think that's going to be like its main thing. It does definitely seem like it's a more, I don't want to say generic, but just more mainstream approach of like, hey, we're going to have this character and eventually he's going to be built up to be like this world threat power or something like that, And
there is precedent that they have in the book that we won't get into for spoiler reasons. But yeah, it did, as far as the first volume, it did have a feel like Goblin Slayer kind of, in the sense that it is small scale in the grand scheme of things, but important for the characters that we're looking at, life or death for them. So, and there is an expedition, I guess that I can say that because it's not very specific, that does bring some exciting elements to the end of the book. And I would suggest, if you're going to get the first one, well, you don't have to necessarily buy the second one, but you should have an avenue to get it, because it does end on not the clearest ending I've ever seen in the first volume of something.
Yeah, like it's a cliffhanger that doesn't give you really, I guess, any insight to what way it might go, either or. So I think if you read the first volume, you're probably going to want to read the second volume, just because of like figuring out what the heck that meant, you know, or what that entails for the rest of the story, because I think that encounter definitely is the biggest influence to where Lev's story will go and kind of the branching possibilities of that. One of the only two other things that I think I'll mention, and just that I think are important, is Michael did mention that the book is slower, but I don't necessarily think it's a dragging read, because although there is a lot of setup, because, you know, obviously Lev being in this new scenario, having to build up a force so that he can actually, you know, carry out some of his first objectives. I think in those slower moments, they do a good job of interjecting those flashback chapters where there is some action going on, because it you know, those flashback chapters take place on battlefields and stuff. But then, you know, later in the book, having at least 2 big skirmishes that are battle related that, you know, kind of pick up as it goes along. The only other thing that I really want to touch on is the characters, because, and we won't go into specifics, but I did like that a lot of the bigger characters that are, I guess, going to have sort of a core base cast, they do have pretty well written backstories, and I think just the intricacies of their past events do play into what they do as characters and what drives them. There is still a couple of characters that I think are a bit more one-dimensional than others, but I think out of the core ones, I think they do a good job of at least bringing in some different elements that you can look and be like, okay, you know, they're like this because of this, and it's not too heavy where you're just learning about, you know, all of what they've done instead of, you know, being in the moment. But
yeah, and another thing that we didn't touch on is the illustrations are actually done by, I think, someone in Vietnam, or in association with Moonquill, and they're actually really good. I mean, I think the art style you can see from the front cover in general, but the art style is really nice, and I'm excited to see more illustrations in the future. So yeah,
I'd be really curious if they will do any kind of like manga version of this story or not, because I feel like it would be prime, especially with how good the default illustrations were. I guess in closing thoughts here, like we've kind of like illustrated the going off of the same word, ironic, but as we've kind of, you know, said before, you know, there's kind of like a teetering back and forth of things. Obviously, with the first volume, you expect it to be kind of a build-up volume, so it's a little bit slower paced, but I don't think it really minded, because like I said, it was shorter. I did like, I was intrigued by a lot of the characters. I don't think I fell in love with any of them in this first volume, but I was just kind of interested to see what possibilities, because I do like the motivation of the character, and I think having somebody that not only was influential in his past life, but also had like the experience of like being in the military and kind of having sort of use of being a tacticianer as well, will lead to like having, you know, the more futuristic insights to primitive battles. Really cool dynamic for the action sequences. The only thing that Michael might be interested on commenting on is that at the end of the book, there is sort of, I guess, like a tease that there might be a prophecy of like chosen people, because there is like this thing that his sister says where, you know, like, oh, don't let them think you're a chosen one or whatever. And so I really hope that it doesn't suffer going forward through like the destiny, or like, you know, like the overall like, oh, he's destined to be like this great savior of the world. But that's just something that I thought was like, gonna watch out for that. But as it stands, I'm gonna give it a I like it. You know, it is what it is. I think it's a fun read. It's definitely a lot better than I thought it was, because you know, when it comes to like English written stuff that's based, you know, or like sort of like inspired by like Japanese light novels, I think it sometimes becomes more of a derivative than a thing that can stand on its own. And I was pleasantly surprised that it did seem like it was one that, you know, could easily be enjoyed for new readers or getting somebody into the genre.
Yeah, overall, I think it's a good start. Like, I'll touch a little bit, just very shortly, on prophecy. Yeah, that kind of is kind of a trope that I don't enjoy, unless the main character, like, the prophecy doesn't matter. Then that's fine.
Yeah.
Or if it's not like worldwide, and you have some of that in Don Manchi. But anyway, I'm excited to see what it holds. I think I'd also rate it I like it. I did like many elements of the book, and I'm excited to see what Moonquill and other series, what they kind of do in comparison to like the Japanese side of things. So I'm excited to check out more series, and overall, Lord of Goblins. I think if you like goblins, it's worth a purchase. And I think if you like fantasy books, I think you'll enjoy it as well. And the print version is very nice and high quality, so it's a good book to have on your shelf for sure.
Oh yeah, and the only thing I don't know is how much the price is on these typically, because they didn't tell us that, but I do know they are offered on Amazon. So if you don't want to order through Moonquill directly, you can order it on Amazon, either the physical edition or a digital copy. So that's pretty cool, and it's just ease of access. So if you're not wanting to go to a different site that you haven't had dealings with, then you can go through a third-party distributor. Do that.
Yep.
But
with that,
we go on to Volume 2, because we will be back for Volume 2. Don't know after that. We'll just see how it goes. But definitely we'll have Volume 2, hopefully within a day or so after this one. So,
all right. Well, have a good day, addicts, and we'll see you next time. We got Don Machi, more books on the horizon here coming. So
yes,
I'm excited for the future, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Peace, guys.
Later.